So I thought that this is one of my favorite events of the year. And I'll get to that. A much bigger audience this year, much broader audience this year. But I want to start with those people that were here last year. Kind of give a little bit of context of why this is so important to me. So if we think about where we were last year, and those of you who were in this audience last year and the things that we talked about, a lot has happened since that point in time. We've seen clustered ONTAP ramp and ramp in a big way. Tens of thousands of controllers shipped, up 170% from Q1. We've seen other technologies. We've seen the FlexPod momentum. $3 billion year to date, $2 billion run rate. And we certainly see the evolution of the alternative approach to this for our competition. We see branded E-Series ramping. You know, we hear a lot about startups and a lot about new technologies and new players. And one of the things I like to point out is in the last 2 quarters, branded E-Series is actually bigger and growing faster than any of those startups, and is profitable at the same time. We also see on command. You know, 7-figure deals, 17 of the top Fortune 20 are on command customers. Pervasive development of flash. They're number 1 or number 2 in total flash shipments in the world. And last year we saw, overall, in terms of market share, in a very, very challenging market, we saw market share above our 10-year average in terms of market share gains. And our branded business has actually outgrown our largest competitor 7 of the last 8 quarters. So when I think about this meeting, none of that happened by accident. It happened because people made it happen. And I think this meeting is key to that. 2 years ago, we had this event, and the call to action was clustered ONTAP. It's time. It's ready. You need to introduce it to your customers and have them derive the value that we spent these years working on it. The message was simple. As goes clustered ONTAP, so goes NetApp. And I think if we look back and trace the ramp of that product, I think the ramp of that product started with this meeting 2 years ago. Last year we talked about how we're not just a one-product company, we're a portfolio, we have lots of products. And in order to truly meet the needs of our customers, in order to truly add value in that conversation, then we need to be selling the whole portfolio. And since then, we see the ramp of E-Series, and we see the ramp of On Command. So at the end of the day, why do I like this meeting? Is because it matters. It's a great use of time. It makes a difference. It's a turning point. There's nobody that's more influential with our customers than our tech team. And we have a lot of new innovation that we're going to talk about today and over the next few days. We're going to talk about branded E-Series, and we're going to talk about cloud, and we're going to talk about On Command, and we're going to talk about FlashRay, and we're going to talk about Cloud ONTAP. We're going to have a lot of things to talk about. And what I need this tech team to do is to learn this technology, understand how it works, how to understand it, how to deploy it against customer problems, and how to make a difference in their business. We've never had more to offer. We've never been more relevant. And frankly, that's why we chose this year to change the nature of this meeting. It's our opportunity to bring customers into the tent. Let them know what we know. Let them learn what we learn. And let's hear from them directly. Let's not talk about customers. Let's have the customers speak for themselves. And not only speak to us, but to speak to each other and share their experiences, share what works, what's been impactful in their business. So the customers in the audience, welcome. We very, very much appreciate you carving out time out of your busy schedule to be with us. And the gravity of that commitment is not lost on us. And it's something that we take very, very seriously as we crafted the agenda over the next few days. So this is an important meeting to us. Your time is very important to you, and we want to make this worth your while. I also want to be clear, this is not your typical users group. If you measure users groups by hype, promises that never get kept, then this isn't going to be a users group at all. This is about working together, learning together, interacting, and frankly, making our customers that are here today part of our team. Together we can create great outcomes for your business. That's our goal. So you're going to hear a lot about the next few days about a lot of new technologies, a lot of them that have been culmination of years of effort that are all coming together at the same time. The rate of new product introduction, new technology introduction for NetApp has never been higher than it is right this minute. You know, just in the last 90 days, we've seen an object storage introduced. We've seen FlashArray introduced. We see culmination of clustered ONTAP with the 8.3 release. A whole bunch of things coming together. And those are the things that are going to drive the near-term execution, near-term performance of the business in solving near-term problems. But the other thing that's key that I want to spend most of the time talking about today is we also recognize that the industry is in transition. There's a lot of things that are going on, and I want to take you through NetApp's position on those. Not the roadmap, but more importantly, what we believe and the reasoning behind the roadmap. So if we look at the imperatives, these are similar imperatives we've talked about in the past. I've used variants of this slide before, and they kind of fall into two categories. The left side's about risk mitigation, cost reduction, and the right side is about opportunity. And we need to be talking about both. We need to be emphasizing them both. A lot of the messaging in this industry is about mitigating bad things, you know, eliminating downtime, reducing costs, and things of the like. But it's also about the opportunity. In the world, in a global world where growth is hard to come from, those opportunities for growth, those are a funding magnet. And those are the things that we need to be emphasized. What are we going to do as IT professionals, as IT technology providers, to ultimately enable our customers to achieve growth? How do we make those successful initiatives happen? How do we be part of them? And how do we make them successful? That's what we want to do as a company. If we can make our customers successful in their most important initiatives that drive growth and success in their business, then great things are going to happen for everybody. And that's what we want to be a part of. So the other thing as we go forward, we hear about all these new initiatives. They're social, and you can see them on this chart. And what's interesting about these is that other than security, all of these have really become top of mind just over the last 5 years. And even security is probably more important and more top of mind today than it's ever been. But a key component of these is the realization is that all of these have important implications for storage. And in fact, without effective data management, really true success on any of these will be very, very hard to find. And as we think about that storage infrastructure, and we think about what we're trying to accomplish, and we think about what's in front of us, is even in the storage world, there's a whole set of new terms and new terminology. And I'd like to walk through them. And I want to give you a position on each. And I think in some cases we've got a contrarian position. I want to go through that. To be an innovator and to be a leader, you have to have conviction. You have to have some sense of what the future yields, the merging of customers and technology, make some big bets because all technology's got a lead time, and ultimately come to fruition. So I want to talk about the bets that we're making based on the beliefs that we have about this technology, and ultimately the priorities we set. And I want to start with first principles around each one, so you have a clear understanding as to how we think about them and how that's going to impact our roadmaps going forward. First one is cloud. And I want to extend cloud. Cloud's got a million definitions, but I want to take the maximal definition of the cloud. I want to extend cloud to the hyperscale. If we want to think about our cloud strategy, we want to think about what we're going to talk to customers about. If we're not talking about the hyperscale players, the Amazons, the Microsoft, then we're really not all-encompassing. And we really need to have a maximum vision here. And as we develop this, I've watched a lot of presentations about the cloud. I've watched a lot of companies present their cloud strategy. And I'd say it falls into several categories. Some of them want to deny the cloud. Some of them are hoping it never happens. Some of them are saying that if you got to use it, then use our cloud. And our approach wants to be different than that. And that is, if the hyperscale players have a role to play and can create value in your enterprise, then not only do we want to support that, but we want to accelerate it. And that's our fundamental founding principle about the cloud. So on the question is, does the cloud add value? And where does it make sense? I'm a believer that there absolutely are truly compelling use cases for the cloud, where the cloud offering will be superior to anything you can do on-premise. I certainly see it in temporary or speculative workloads, things that have a time component to them. Either they need to go fast, or they need to have limited upfront investment, or they need to be temporary, they're seasonal in nature, or they're test and dev related. The ability to have at your fingertips instant infrastructure of any size that you can immediately turn on, and at the same time go the opposite way. And that is, when the project runs its course, it's either unsuccessful or it moves to another phase or it's only temporary, to basically unwind that with limited penalty. That is a capability that you can't have on-premise. You can buy lots of servers, but HP and IBM aren't taking them back if you don't need them anymore. But that's what the cloud enables. And there's a flexibility and agility and a capability. So if you're a new venture being created, rather than spending your first dollars on infrastructure, you can go to the cloud. If you're a new line of business being created, or you're doing some type of proof of concept, or you're doing test and development, or some type of seasonal thing, there's a capability here that is uniquely cloud capable, no matter how much scale you have yourself. I also see the other end of the spectrum. I see cases where there's very, very low utilization workloads. Things like backup and archiving, where the investments at the cloud makers in terms of power optimization, infrastructure optimization, physical plant, will never be able to be emulated on-premise, and they'll always have a cost advantage on that dimension. And therefore, I think the cloud will be the endpoint for archiving and backup. As a big part of the transaction that we announced yesterday. But I also see other parts of the cloud where the story is not nearly so clear. I routinely have clients that come to me and say that I can do, using traditional technology, including NetApp technology, on-premise for a fraction of the cost of what can be done in the cloud. And usually that story is typical of workloads that have got a high bandwidth or a high I/O per second, but generally a very, very high activity level. And then there's other concerns out there about the cloud that are not necessarily cost-related, like security, like performance, like regulatory. So in the end, I think it's inevitable that the conclusion here to be reached is that there are going to be workloads that are going to be compelling in the cloud, and there are workloads that are going to remain compelling in owned infrastructure, whether it's on-premise or a colo, but nonetheless owned and operated by our end-user clients. And that's why at the end of the day, the hybrid cloud has to be the ultimate model. Is every enterprise will have some element of traditional hyperscaler cloud, or traditional cloud providers, hyperscaler cloud providers, and on-premise computing. But I also want to bring up another point here, and that is the idea that I'm going to have a set of apps that are going to run in the cloud, and I'm going to have a set of apps that are going to run on-premise. I don't think that that captures the true essence. I think the potential is greater than that. What if I can start an app in the cloud, and then I can move it back on-premise in the sweet spot of its life? Once it's proven, once it's starting to get mature, once it has a high activity level, and then I can put it back in the cloud as it becomes a legacy. True application lifecycle management. If I have to know that if I have to run an app in its mainstream life, it has to be on-premise, and therefore I need to start it on-premise, I'm not going to start up very, very many new ventures. But if I can start in the cloud with no very, very risk of failure from an economic point of view, the flexibility, the agility, the new product introduction, the innovation that I can bring to my business with that model is compelling. So the cloud is not an isolated island that's separate from everything else. The true value of the cloud is to have it to be a seamless extension of on-premise computing. And that's really our initiative, and that's our focus, and that's what we're hoping to deliver with our cloud strategy. So the fact of the matter is, since there's going to be a cloud component and there's going to be an on-premise component, people are still going to build infrastructure, and therefore things like integrated infrastructure products like FlexPod still matter. The premise of FlexPod is a simple one, and that is, in speaking with customers, the customer's ability to have the time, the interest, the skill to evaluate a whole landscape of products, to integrate products, all in the face of increasing time pressure, increasing budget pressure, that skill and that flexibility is going away. And therefore, the desire to integrate at a higher level is increasing. And historically, the alternative approach that's been offered to solve that problem coming from the server vendors is basically an integrated solution from them, But the penalty of that approach is that none of the components of that strategy are best of breed, and therefore there's an enormous sacrifice of innovation and consequent business value as a result. The rationale of FlexPod in its simplest form is that if we can, outside of customer engagements, integrate with other best-of-breed players and create a set of reference designs that we could come to a client and say we have something that is every bit as integrated as anything you can buy from the traditional server providers, and it's made out of best-of-breed components, and here's the compelling business value that we can deliver with that. That's the sense of FlexPod. The other thing about FlexPod, which is different than the normal definitions, is FlexPod is not necessarily just an infrastructure solution. The problem that we're trying to solve is not integrated infrastructure, it is integration itself. And therefore, the integration extends to the applications. And that's why you see things like FlexPod for Microsoft and SAP and Oracle and Red Hat and Citrix and on down the line. And that is, how do we make it possible for customers to integrate new technologies that have compelling business value with lower burden of integration, lower risk, and accelerated time to deployment? That's the premise of FlexPod. You should expect us to continue to invest in that, and you should expect to see that to expand as time goes on. Another key component of on-premise computing is flash. And I want to get down to first principles of flash as well. Why is flash interesting? And the idea of flash is that it's a semiconductor device, has very, very high performance on a cost per I/O. It's cheaper than rotating media, traditional disk drives. It has low latency. It has low power consumption. All good stuff. On the other hand, on a cost per bit basis, it's actually more expensive. And for enterprise class drives, basically high performance disk drives, that gap is closing, and that's why enterprise drives will be obsolete before long. But on capacity-based drives, the gap is not only wider, but it's also not closing. So the solution to this is relatively simple from an architectural point of view, and that is the data that needs the performance criteria belongs on flash, and the 90 to 95 or even more % data that doesn't have that requirement will go on rotating media. And I think that part of the story is inarguable. However, it's a static worldview. And that is, that 90 or 95% of the data that's idle today, at one point in time, a lot of that data met the performance criteria, but it doesn't anymore. So therefore, data ages. And ultimately, as data no longer fits the performance criteria, it needs to get off of the flash. And if it doesn't, you're eventually going to be building up idle data in the most expensive storage you can buy. So at the end of the day, if this problem isn't solved, then flash will effectively become a niche application, really around hotspots that are idle, or a very, very small set of workloads that are very, very, very compressible, where the cost of the media is not nearly as high like virtual desktop. But flash, to become truly mainstream, really needs to have a data migration component to it. And that data migration could be caching, it could be any number of things. And that is really the bet that NetApp wants to make. And that is ultimately realize that data indeed has a life cycle. And the management of the data across those platforms, flash, the hard drive, and perhaps ultimately to the cloud, if that makes sense, the multi-platform data management is going to be key. In fact, the multi-platform data management over time will be more important to the mainstreaming of flash than the attributes of any individual flash deployment. And that's why at the end of the day, data management matters, and all the various incarnations of flash, whether it's flash in the host, all flash arrays, hybrid systems, they will all exist, but it'll be the data management that matters. And in the end of the day, the data management providers will be the ones that will be strategic, and it's why the point providers are not going to be long-term players in this industry. So as we think about all the modes and all the capabilities of flash and all the forms of flash, I get asked all the time, which ones will exist, which ones won't? Well, they're all going to exist. They all have benefits, they all have negatives, but at the end of the day, if you can make the data management seamless, then you can deploy them all successfully. And if you can't make the data management seamless, it's inevitable that you're going to be very, very inefficient with a lot of idle data sitting on very, very expensive storage. So from a NetApp perspective, that's why we talk about total flash under management. not individual all-flash arrays. We may, in fact, have shipped more all-flash arrays than anybody, but the real focus for us is the successful deployment of flash through the enterprise and the successful, efficient management thereof. Because if we are selling more and more and more flash under management, then I think we're winning the data management argument. And that is essential to the total flash point of view. So George will talk about the vision, George will talk about the roadmap, but we have a set of products, we have a leadership position today, we have products that we've just introduced, others on the way, and I wouldn't trade our flash portfolio or our flash position with anybody in this industry today. Another key component as we move forward is this question of investment protection. We hear about all these new technologies, and one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, do I need a new technology infrastructure to drive it? Do I need new systems of record? Or how do they interface with my systems of record? Do I need to build a parallel infrastructure? What do I do about this? Very, very, very popular question. And then there's also fuel being thrown on the fire. You know, we hear about this Platform 2, Platform 3 stuff that's being taken to the extreme by one of our competitors, basically freeze the old stuff, all the investments in the new stuff. Certainly the startups have a vested interest in saying that the past doesn't matter anymore. And even the cloud providers are in the same boat. But the simple matter is that all of these new technologies are going to have to interact with the systems of record, so they are not going anywhere. And since this interaction is only going to increase, they not only are not going anywhere, but they cannot be frozen either. So the fact that the traditional systems of record are going to continue for an extended period of time, and these new technologies need to come on board, I think there's two choices that can be had. One of them is I build two parallel infrastructures, the one I have and a new one around these new apps, and I work really, really hard on interfaces and interactions and APIs between the two. Or I have one architecture that solves them both. That's truly seamless. Customers need the bridge to the future. They don't want to hear that everything that happened in the past, all those things that are now compliant, that are proven, that have regulatory approval, now I can't use anymore, and I need to start over with some new technology, perhaps from a set of vendors I'm not familiar with. That is not a winning story. A better story is, I've made a set of on-premise choices, I need to continue to make those investments, and those choices not only are serving me well on-premise, but they are going to enable me to realize my vision around these key imperatives going forward. So as ONTAP was re-engineered and re-architected and effectively redone to create clustered ONTAP, that is what this new operating system is about, is to enable that. So we think about investment protection, it's a smooth transition and a path from where you are today to where you want to go in the future, without introducing a parallel architecture and all of the complexity and the interfaces that go with it. So I want to come to another one, the last one on the list, and that's software-defined storage. And this is where a lot of this technology comes together. We go back to the cloud idea. You know, a lot of clients have this vision that the great thing about the cloud is that they're interchangeable. You know, I can run on Amazon today. If I don't like that, I'll run on Amazon tomorrow. If I don't like Amazon, I'll run on SoftLayer. I'll just go on down the line. And to some extent, that's true. And it's particularly true of fungible technologies like servers and networking, where there's no history, there's no state. Once something is executed upon, it's over. But storage is different. Once I store a byte of data, I need to protect it. I need to store it. I need to secure it. And I need to produce it on demand forever. And since it has state, it accumulates. So simple math, even high bandwidth connections move about 1 4 terabyte disk drive per hour. So the idea that I'm going to dynamically move stuff around in real time to create brokerage amongst cloud players is not so simple. The physics are against it. The other key realization here is that underneath it all, it says that data management is a very, very, very important component. In fact, as key as any other component in the realization of the hybrid cloud. And therefore, that's something that we need to work on, especially if you think about this application lifecycle where I could be born in the cloud, come back and run on-premise, and go back into the cloud again. Very, very important presentation. So if we think about NetApp, our vision is that we want to be the enterprise storage provider across all of your data types. George will go through the roadmap. We'll talk about FAS. We'll talk about FlexArray, the former vSeries. We'll talk about NetApp Private Storage, where you have your data but have access to the flexible computer of the cloud. We'll talk about Cloud ONTAP, basically a version of ONTAP that actually runs in the cloud. And the idea here is that one set of tools, one set of processes, one catalog across all of your data, whether it's on our equipment or not, and whether it's on-premise or not. That's the big idea of clustered ONTAP and how we go forward there. That's our definition of software-defined, is a set of data management capabilities that is independent of the underlying hardware. Now, we see other pitches about software-defined storage. We see thin veneers of software that run over hardware where tremendous amounts of value are delivered by the dissimilar hardware. So the fundamental value proposition is different depending on the hardware you're running. That's not software-defined storage. That's something else. We also see software-only solutions where it works for certain applications around certain workloads. It doesn't deal with other applications. It doesn't deal with the cloud. It doesn't certainly deal with cloud brokering. It doesn't deal with the hybrid cloud. So those may be software-defined, but they're not enterprise-wide. The only technology that can deliver this vision at scale is ONTAP. And that's what the re-architecting of ONTAP around clustered ONTAP was about, is to set the stage for this future. So software-defined is not the same as software-only. We could have a customer that could run cloud ONTAP or run ONTAP in a virtual machine. Those are indeed software-only. But that same customer, to have compatibility, could be running FlexPod on-premise. Software-defined is about a common set of functionality and a common set of management. Software-only is an implementation detail. And just as important, as I talked earlier in terms of investment protection, all of this capability is compatible with the investments that you already made, are making, or about to make in on-premise around clustered ONTAP. No parallel architecture, no complexity associated with that, no new sets of regulation, compliance, and interfaces need to be built. So you think about the big picture, is we have a set of individual products. We have cloud products, we've got flash products, we've got object products, we've got clustered ONTAP, and all of those will compete and win and stand alone, but the important thing here is that they're part of a bigger vision. And that is ultimately we want these products to integrate in a way to create a truly seamless experience to integrate the public cloud into your environment. As I said earlier, our goal is if Amazon makes sense for you, or Microsoft, or whomever, and I believe that for workloads it absolutely does, then we're not here to deny it. We're not here to talk about risks. We're here to say if this is important to you, if this helps your business, if this adds value to you, then we are here to help, and we're going to create a solution to make it as seamless as possible for you to deliver on that vision. And that's the bigger picture that links all these products together. So I want to transition, and that is all this technology stuff is all well and good. But at the end of the day, the question is, does it create business value? You know, I tell people starting at our new hire orientation at NetApp is that our objective is that we want our clients to believe that they've accomplished something meaningful in their business that they would not have been able to accomplish had they made any choice other than NetApp. That's what we're here to accomplish. So we go through this big thing, and it's not about a big list of customers. It's solving the biggest problems at our biggest customers. Big software developer comes to us and say, our biggest issue is we have tens of thousands of developers and we need developer productivity. What are you going to do to help us with that? We talk about the ability to create logical copies of the data. Everybody have their own test environment. They can all operate independently of each other. Have the appearance of 20 or 30 times more storage than they actually own. We have customers that are looking, the largest telecom network operator in the world is looking to create a new line of business, something that's going to be meaningful for the top line of a very, very large firm. They built a line of business and services around NetApp that's exclusively NetApp, that are customer-facing. We've got customers that want to realize the benefits of the cloud, but they're in highly regulated industries like financial services. And we come to them with NetApp Private Storage, which in their mind creates 90% of the value of the cloud with only 10% of the risk. And then we deal with things that truly are life and death. Our healthcare customers, our DoD customers, and we take that very, very seriously. But at the end of the day, the really important realization, it's not about running mission-critical apps. Every major vendor does that. And we sit through a lot of presentations and a lot of studies and a lot of documents that we get that are trying to split atoms of the difference between vendors, very, very insular. But that's not what we're talking about here. Forget the minutia. We are here to create competitive advantage. You know, we use this Sabre video and this picture, and it delivers a message. Sabre is all about winning the next race. Everything else is secondary. So for our customers, as you go back, and the NetApp people that are here to help, are we thinking about that? Are we thinking about what are we doing to win our equivalent of the next race? And are we letting the minutia go away and forget about it? I get asked, very common question I get asked by CIOs, is how do I get a seat at the table? Meaning, how do I be part of the inner circle of the team that's running this business? And I tell them really kind of an old world, new world story. I said, you know, in the old world, if you were the CIO and systems went down, you got fired. But now we're in a new world. And that's still true. But the other thing that gets you fired is if a competitor is doing something that you told the CEO was either too risky or couldn't be done. And if a CIO wants a seat at the table, the message is simple. Or I should say the criteria is simple, is that you need to be creating competitive advantage on a par with the other people who have seats at the table. And if you're not, it's not going to happen for you. And if you think about where IT is today, you know, it was only 10, 15 years ago we were hearing, does IT matter? I think that there's more opportunities to innovate in IT, more opportunities to impact the business than ever before. But they come with risk, and they're new, and not all these technologies are going to play out the way we like. And the IT professionals that can thread that needle, that can take managed risks, avoid the obstacles, and deliver compelling competitive advantage to their firm are going to win big, both for their firm and personally. So to our tech team, that's my call to action in this meeting, is learn the technology and understand how we can enable our customers to create competitive advantage in their business. And to our customers, thank you for attending. Together we can create competitive advantage. You've heard the call to action to our team. One of the reasons I want you to be here, I wanted to hear what you say, I want you to hear what we say to our team. And what you should know what to expect from them. And as you think about creating competitive advantage, and you think about the difference that that provides, at the end of the day, whether you're a customer, a partner, or an employee in NetApp, our commitment is we want you to think of us as a teammate you count on to win. Thank you very much.